Hi there, Sir Richard Little joining you once again from your land partner. We are on video 78 out of 100. We are in the midst of, or just at the beginning, sorry, of the build phase. So we're still in pre-construction, and we are going to talk today about what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about quantity surveyors. Yes, another key member of the team. So in terms of quantity surveyors, you may well have had a QS or QS practice involved in the earlier stages of your project and in feasibility appraisal stages. Lots of people will use the services of quantity surveyors at that point in terms of projected costs and things like that, because essentially for us, the QSs have two distinct roles really, and that is a financial consultant, a cost consultant if you like, and also they often look after the contractual side as well. Now those roles can vary to a degree in terms of the financial, so we'll start with the contract side of things. Now most of you will know, if you've listened to we talk about project management and things like that, is we use project managers for much of this process. The one thing that we don't always use project managers for is the contract administration, so actually sorting out the relevant paperwork for the contracts and everything like that. So this is something where you might use the services of a QS, and that said, a QS can often make a good project manager depending on the nature of the project, size of the project, and their own experience. So we're actually working with a couple of QSs at the moment that are doing project management on one particular project with us, which is going good so far. So they're going to be taking care of, so it's making sure that you're using the right contract, and this is all part of the preparation that they'll be involved with in the tender documents. So tender and contract documents is where we tend to be looking at them at right in the pre-construction phase anyway. So that will be the tender documents will possibly be all of the drawings, all of the planning drawings, all of the surveys, all the reports, maybe a schedule of works, a specification, that sort of thing, building reg drawings and stuff like that. Sometimes bills of quantities are used. We don't go that route ourselves. We put the onus on the contractor to make sure that the quantities are there or thereabouts correct. If you, as the client, produce the bill of quantities, you are opening yourself up to, it's got to be right basically, so you're opening yourself up to a situation where they will be looking at, when they've got the tender documents, they'll be looking at that bill and they'll be looking for variations. And this is not what's supposed to happen, but really happens. Is that's why we avoid that, because it does open you up as the client for a lot more increased costs, should we say. Enough said about that. Possibly. Other sort of documentation that we need to be talking about. So which contract is the right contract to use? In and around sort of JCT is still the sort of probably got the highest percentage of contracts that come through JCT. There's a number of standard JCT contracts to fit certain types of project. It might be a design and build contract. It might be a minor works contract. So this is where you will be taking the advice of your QS and your project manager, if they're not one and the same people, to actually decide which is the right route, and that will make a lot of difference as you go through the tendering process. So when you're going out to get those prices from interested parties. So another thing that the QSs will possibly do is they'll help you draw up the tender list, or they maybe even draw up the tender list, though contractors that are suitable for pricing for the particular project that you're putting out to them, whether that's a relatively sort of small project where it's perhaps a big refurb and perhaps an extension or something like that, or smallish conversion, up to bigger projects. So they'll enable you to have the right paperwork. If you don't go out when you go out to tender with the right paperwork, then the end result's not going to be right. So again, there's going to be lots of stuff to disagree over, shall we say. Issues will be created, so it's really, really important to make sure that we are getting the right stuff out there. So we would always say the contract administration and contract documents is generally sitting in and around the QS stroke project manager. Not to say that other professionals won't do it for you, as we've touched on before. Architects, engineers, they could be leading the project team, in which case they may well have a big input into that. So the other side of the things, which just focus on a little bit more now, is the cost consultancy, the cost control. As I said before, you may well have used the services of a quantity surveying practice in your initial stages when you're looking at the project or looking at projects to give you a decent steer on what costs are likely to be. It's always a difficult one, but they can be quite useful at that point. But we've moved on from that now, so it's where do they sit now? So they're going to be looking, that depending on whether you are the contractor, so you are the main contractor, or whether you're going out to a main contractor. So obviously, if you're going out to a main contractor, when we're talking about the tender documents, etc., then the QS is going to have somewhat of a smaller role, if you like. So they're going to be monitoring potentially, forecasted costs and actual costs, and they're going to be making sure that somebody's looking after your money, basically. If you are the main contractor, then often the QS will have, and their team will have a much more significant role, because it could very well be that they're going to be in charge of putting the work packages together. So actually splitting up the big contract, which covers everything from coming on site to going off site. Whereas if you start breaking it down as you become the main contractor, if indeed you do that, then you could be breaking it down to groundworks, for instance, perhaps brickwork, carpentry, joinery, plastering, electrics. You get where I'm going with that. And they will be breaking that down. And there will be then a lot more management of that. So again, they will probably be involved in that. And it still can be contractual, depending on the size of the project. You may well have a contract. It's always useful to have a look at contracts, as long as they're the right contracts to work with the subcontractors. QS could also be involved in, yes, as you're the main contractor and you might be supplying some of the materials, then they would perhaps be what we call taking off the drawings of the spec the amounts of what you want. Basically, they come up with a shopping list, and they may well be negotiating prices, etc. So they can have a much more extensive role if they are part of the contractor's team. So if you're going out to a main contractor to price it, they will probably be dealing with QSs at the other end as well. And as with anything in life, consultants of the same ilk, they like to talk to each other, don't they? They've got the same language. So they've got differing roles, but I think the point about QSs is you're not really going to get through a project of any meaningful sort of size without QSs. Certainly your funders, your investors, etc., are going to make sure who's looking after the money, where's the money flow, how is it working, who's signing off to say, yeah, okay, we will pay those contractors. So just as just to give you an example, so if we have a main contractor on site, then there'll be a monitoring surveyor acting on behalf of the lender, and we will then go out and the contractor would say they'll submit an invoice effectively to say, I need X, let's call it £80,000 this month. You go to the lender will send out the monitoring surveyor, they'll check that X or £80,000 or whatever is the right amount to pay, and then they will forward that. Now, if the quantity surveyor may have a role in just the transactional stuff, overseeing it, that the numbers, it's going in and out in the right places and it's going to the right people. If you are acting as a contractor, then you will put together effectively a claim, if you like, trying to sort of mix the language up here a little bit to sort of take some of the more technical terms away, and you will put together a sum, and you will actually ask for a drawdown from the lender. Again, they'll send the monitoring surveyor out, who sometimes is also a quantity surveyor, not always, but sometimes is. They'll come out and they'll say if they agree whether the £80,000 of work has been done or not. Then if it has, they'll send the money through, and maybe the QS will then start splitting that money up to go to different subcontractors. So you're getting an element there of much more closer involved cost control. Yes, you can do this stuff without fully qualified QSs. It's like with anything else. But generally, we like to see somebody there that's not just got the relevant letters after their name, but they've got the necessarily insurance, potentially indemnity insurance, etc., just in case. And funders particularly like to see, professionally qualified people mostly looking after in these key positions. So and a QS is very much a key part of the team, and as to the extent of their involvement obviously is dependent on the project and the way you're going forward. But if you don't have connections with QS practices already, and you're getting into development, then you need to ask around and see who's who. There's some QSs that work on their own. There's QSs that work in bigger practices, multidisciplinary practices, which cover all sorts of potentially surveying roles or construction roles, construction management, etc. So that they are out there, and you do need to connect with them at some point, because it's good to know a little bit of their lingo as well, so that you can actually have a bit of a conversation with them. But if you think you're going to build a decent sized business, or even do one decent sized project without input from a QS, then think on. You just won't. Like every other consultant, there's some good ones, there's the bulk of them which are average, and then there's some bad ones. But and that's nothing to do with how much they charge, and how many letters they got after their name. It's about having somebody, as ever, on board that has got relevant experience within that part of the sector. So if it's a QS that's used to perhaps doing big road infrastructure projects, or does lots of, industrial estates and things like that, they're not really going to have the relevant information and connections, etc., that you need for perhaps your residential development. So it's actually having people on board that understand the scale and nature of the project, and sometimes the area, because again, like with all your professionals, if you've got one or two decent professionals, they'll introduce you to others. Be aware that sometimes it's jobs for the boys. I think the saying used to be very sexist, but that's what it used to be. But that's not always the case. And if you know a little bit about what you're talking about, and you can have a proper conversation with your professionals, you're soon going to work out whether they're the right ones or the wrong ones. Anyway, as ever, slightly going off topic. So we've been talking about the role of QSs, particularly in the pre-construction phase, and obviously taking it a little bit further as well. But absolutely key part of the team. So it's been Richard Little with you again today from your land partner, and I will see you again another day. Take care.